This is the second day of the May-April 1986 retreat. We will start out by looking at this matter of fault finding. I think we're all very familiar with both sides of fault finding. Having grown up as little children, and probably in no way remembering the many times that we were blamed for doing things which we had either done or not done. Growing up in this system of blame. And very quickly catching on to the system and blaming others for what is happening to oneself and to others, to things. There's a real basic, raw, primitive, this is not said evaluatively, just to say how deeply ingrained it is, need to find out who did it, who did this. To even ask the question immediately when something has happened, who did it? Who's to blame for it? Very often this question of who did it, who's to blame for it, finding the culprit and punishing becomes more important than taking care of what happened. One can ask, why is this such a deeply ingrained impulse? To find out who did it and to take action toward that person. Not necessarily action which rectifies or undoes or heals what has happened, but to inflict something on someone else. And that giving psychological satisfaction. We touched upon it yesterday in trying to... Somebody had said when birds sing, they don't just sing beautiful songs. They are beautiful songs, but it's not just that they sing this to add to the aesthetic qualities of nature. They sing to attract... Oh, I forgot to do that. To attract a partner, a female. Usually the men sing. Or to proclaim, this is my pad, don't enter. But then we said, even if someone enters the pad and A little border skirmish ensues. The little bird chasing the big bird, or the big bird chasing the little bird. After the territory is established, the big bird understands this is not for me to make a nest here or to feed. Then that's the end. No punishing party is sent out to find the transgressor and do something to him so he will remember not to do this again. We do that, we human beings. And has it worked? It's an incidental question. We believe strongly in this, that this we don't even question it. You have to punish the offender so that he or she will learn not to do this again, but it doesn't work this way. Offense and punishing have gone on, as long as human beings have at least written history. No reason to presume it didn't go on before history was written. The Bible instructs, I don't know who says it, to whom, but it is written in that book, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. If a tooth is knocked out, knock out the tooth of the aggressor. Why? Just to satisfy some deeply ingrained program in the brain? There's another program that says, and we've just talked about this, if you do that, then you will prevent further aggression. As a totally false assumption, has not been proven true. Maybe a period of intimidation of another person or another country or tribe, but during that false silence, calm, the resentment, the humiliation smolders, and there'll be an outbreak of aggression again. There are systems of psychotherapy that have evolved to uncover as much as possible first causes of present painful behavior, neurotic behavior. Hoping that in the uncovery, in the discovery of what caused the present behavior, in uncovering it, and the client or patient who is in therapy, by living through this once more, finishing the business, closing the books on it, and being relieved of the symptom that was the hope, or is the hope. And it may work partially with specific symptoms, and yet we develop new ones. We develop new hurts and need to find out who is it that inflicted the hurt upon us. The past of each one of us in which pain and hurt and injury, psychological as well as physical, has been inflicted upon us, I think even for one individual human being, may be infinite, untraceable to its last incident. And trying to uncover the incidents, I always feel is like taking a cup trying to empty out a vast lake. Leaving alone the fact that one's own past doesn't stand or sit there isolated. It is connected with the past of our parents and all the people who have imposed upon us our wounds, our hurts, and their past and the past of their ancestors. So there is a vast common pool of hurt inflicting that we all share. Individually, there may be different shadings, different degrees, unique, specific incidents, but that all of us, all human beings, have been hurt since early childhood, I think, is a fact. And so maybe this urge to find the culprit, hoping that in finding the culprit there may be relief from the present hurt. Finding or punishing some kind of retributive act. I think it becomes clear that to the extent that the mind is occupied with finding the culprit, or the incidents, uncovering the incidents that caused my present mental, physiological, psychological, physical pain, to the extent that the mind is scanning its memory to find out who did it, what did it, how did it come about, how did it happen. To that extent, the brain is occupied on a very limited scale. And that occupation cannot possibly allow it to be quiet, unoccupied, in the presence of this present hurt. And what may be needed to meet this present hurt completely, not partially, totally, is a brain which is not out on a search for causes or a vendetta. In other words, which is not engaged in programs. A brain which realizes that engagement in programs and attention right now to the hurt, the ache, the pain, the suffering are incompatible. There's either the programs rolling, who did it, how did it happen, I must find out, I must pin it down, I must find the culprit, I must punish. All of that makes impossible this quality of awareness in which the brain is still, except for its life-sustaining activities, heartbeat and so forth. And it only can be still if it is quite clear, at least rationally, intellectually, that being occupied in programs, search parties, is not stillness. That is a self-sustaining process which not only engages the brain, but it engages the whole emotive process of the body. We all know that we may not at this moment suffer any dis-ease, any discomfort, but a memory comes up of what he or she did to me. And immediately the peace and quiet is transformed into a boiling pot. How could he have done that? And why didn't I give him or her a piece of my mind? And now, in fantasy, one gives him or her that peace of mind. Or accuses, or gets helpers to accuse, allies. And the broiling and bubbling goes on all over the system. And then, if there's some awareness of this, then one says, why do I feel so exhausted or so upset or so frustrated or angry? And then a new program comes and I must not feel this way, I must get rid of this, I must this or that. None of which is the effacing. Let's use the words tentatively. Come up with better ones, we'll use them. A meeting, a facing, a being with, an awareness of oneself as one sits here, or walks, or is in the kitchen working. An undivided, uncontrolled, or unpressured attention. Pressured by no primitive urge to get revenge, or in fantasy or in real. To see that for what it is. It's a little partial program which gets brain and body all into a turmoil. It's clear, the earlier this is seen when it comes up, the easier it is to drop it. Because a body in turmoil takes a while to calm down. It takes longer if one is upset over the body in turmoil, because then there's a new turmoil against the old turmoil. So, can there be this fine alertness which sees an old scene come up and immediately sees where this leads to? One has been through it at least 500 times, maybe 1,000 times. One can see it at a glance and and not enter into this dead-end alley. One doesn't have to. If there's no attention, one does. It goes like that. If attention dawns when the whole agitation is in process, then to allow the body patience, time, and to move with it, to feel all the intricate outpourings and manifestations of anger. It's really very interesting to feel it all with no stake in it, no distraction to also find the culprit for this anger. The culprit is the memory, incidentally. Because whoever inflicted upon us what was recorded in memory, that person isn't there anymore. It's now the memory. Do you see that? Plus, if we were able to see the whole life of that person who inflicted upon us the injury, the humiliation, if somehow magically, the whole life history of that person could be flashed to us, it would be our own. That person too was humiliated and hurt in his childhood and is now compensating for it by exerting power on someone who's weak. So, does one get a feeling for the fact that sitting here on these different mats and chairs are representatives of the total past of humanity? Representative results. And in facing this past that sits here completely, without mental forays into memory, what happens? One may have never completely faced. I don't want to say something, because the language then implies that there's me facing part of me. That's not so. It's not me facing my past. This is the past. Can there be awareness of that? If there is awareness, then there's no past. There's only awareness. Physical twinges, all the manifestations of the anguish, anxiety, anger, and this woof, it's all there. If it's not faced in this way, if there's not this, I don't want to say penetrating, it's an encompassing awareness, when that's not there, the past continues. When there's no attention, we do to others as was done unto us. Automatically. That's what the brain is programmed to do. To execute programs that have been found to be efficient. Where the mistake there comes in is very unclear, because a lot of these programs that the brain carries out have not been efficient, and yet they're still being carried out. Maybe because there's satisfaction in it. After the bombing of 3 places in Libya, if I remember the statistics right, some 70% of people questioned in this country found satisfaction in this news. It's an amazing thing to hear. Talk to some people. One person who came to retreat, he said, frankly telling you, I felt satisfaction too before I started thinking what this all implies. But them bullies who kill Americans, precious Americans, were paid back. See, the whole thing is so rich in its teaching. As long as people from other countries, they're also our brothers and sisters, but as long as they were bombed, we weren't riled up. But since it was Americans, then we have to start doing something sooner or later. And of course, those people who were killed, maimed, injured, frightened, terrorized in that particular country, there is now the same urge, impulse, instinct to revenge that sooner or later, not immediately, maybe, but it'll be revenge. It's laid down, it's deposited. Just as our action came out of deposits, which are as deep as the Grand Canyon. How are you going to get at all of these deposits? Scoop them out, cupful by cupful? So can one not just listen to this and find it interesting, but beware of this instinct to who did this? Where is the culprit? To watch it as we go. It happens for the smallest of things. The anger, the satisfaction, or the craving. The craving for satisfaction is like craving for food almost. And is that all we're capable of fulfilling our programs? If we look at human history, that seems to be so. We can't work on the large scale here, and yet large scale and small scale are no different. Can light be shed? In a process that does not involve any preset conditioning program of the brain. Now, if one says, well, how will I quiet my brain so that I can have this encompassing awareness? That's a new program, or another old program has been triggered. How can I quiet my brain down so I can, in order to? If you need to listen to something, see something, it's quite clear that there has to be quiet. If you need to listen to the sounds, you can't have the radio going, although we seem to have developed this, I don't know what kind of a capacity it is, to listen to the radio and listen to the sounds of nature, of whatever's there. Well, you could say a radio is just another sound. And if it's there, if it's some neighbor plays the radio, there's nothing one can do about it. What I'm using this example for to point out is that when there has to be this very fine, still, quiet listening, then the radio is no help. And turning it off will reveal that much more sound that's already there. We all do this at times, that in needing to hear something or see something that we really want to see, we have to look at. The brain quiets down, it has to. If you go down to the creek and want to listen to the sound of the water, all right, now the sound of this, whatever it is, if the brain has already said this is airplane, this is trees in the wind, can one try again, start over, and wonder whether one can listen without these words, whether these words are really necessary for listening. They're necessary for knowing, for being in the know, and there's a tremendous lust and urge to be in the know. But it's not necessary for listening, on the contrary. It divides the listening immediately. You can see that, don't you? You can hear it. Together with fault finding, which was what we started out with, goes the feeling of guilt if one has done something to somebody. There's guilt. Sometimes there's guilt and one doesn't know what one has really done. And yet one wakes up and there's very quickly a feeling of guilt. I must have done something wrong. I must have been bad. All of us derive our self-images and self-feelings from how we were reacted to from the very beginning, and what we were told what we were, how we were. We learned that with the language that was used. At the same time that we learned language, we also learned what we are. Good, bad. better than, worse than. And we were blamed for things that we did. Very often, a child still doing something innocently, not knowing what the damage is that has been done. And how can a child know what is valuable to a parent, what is not? And then punishment or loud sounds descending upon it. I think all of us at some time or other were blamed for things we had not done. And yet our all-powerful parents saying so, that we did do it, we believed it. And from that comes the associated feelings. If the parents look mad, angered, or sad, we must have done something. Because if we did something, this is how they looked. Just recently, talking with someone about their life history, a history of a very painful early divorce of parents, if I recollect right, and asking this person who was narrating, how did you feel about it? She said immediately, of course I felt it was my fault. I felt it was my fault that the parents separated. And these feelings don't end. We carry them over. We still have them. Either we've done something or we haven't done something. But the guilt is there. Guilt is, what is guilt? Isn't there in it a large part of fear of punishment, fear of impending doom? To a little child, when the parent comes down either spanking or yelling, that's doom. Almost doom. I'm not talking right now how children also challenge and irritate parents. Somebody said this to me, you are very idealistic about children. Actually, I'm not, but I may sound this way here. Children learn this power game almost immediately. It's amazing. So, often the question is asked, what do I do with my guilt? Or with my regrets about something I did maybe 10 or 15 years ago. I can't shed it. I can't get rid of it. I'm just carrying it like a burden. Again, as we said before, look at it. If the brain is busy, occupied with running this program of what it did or what it may have done or what could happen because of what it did, and what repentance could I do? How could I pay back? This occupation of the brain prevents seeing clearly right now what I'm doing. Part of me, a good part of me is absent, is not there. With the likelihood or almost certainty that I'm going to do the same thing over again. Because when we're not attentive, we're on automatic. And automatic means me first, my interests, my desires, my needs, my fears. All of that is there in gear automatically when there's no attention. So the preoccupation with both guilt and fault-finding prevents seeing clearly now and continues the same pattern over, over and over and over. We do the same thing that we then have to feel guilty for. Do you see that? So if there is the waking up with guilt, can there be astute attention right at this instant? Not directing it, trying to suppress it, do something with it, do something about it. No, just what is it? Just to be with it. Like a mother is with a child about to be born. With all the nuances of dis-ease that's there, and not a shadow of resistance to it, which takes immense alertness. If there's not alertness, there's going to be resistance to something that's uncomfortable. And if that's not seen, then there's conflict, which causes more dis-ease. And that alertness or awareness is there when one has to finally find out what this guilt is. What is it? Not to come to a solution or to come to a conclusion. It's there. It's showing itself. One can see it right now and doesn't have to go back in time, which means in memory, which means in attention, which means the same stuff going on, producing guilt. Person will say in a meeting, well, I just don't have this kind of intensity or passion to look. Well, then one doesn't have it, not make a problem out of it. But one does often have the passion. One wants to get rid of the guilt feeling. One doesn't like that. Oh, one doesn't want the pain that was caused by somebody in the past. And rather then goes to some authority person, figure, who will give one remedies, systems, methods, faith, belief, comfort, support. These businesses thrive. But do they bring insight? Which meaning complete in-touchness, complete no separation, no escape, no resistance. No matter what will be the consequences, I don't know, nobody knows. And that's not the point right now. One will meet that too. One can meeting meets anything, including death. Actually, this meeting is death. Death to all of our escape routes, comfort routes, support systems. We will end here for today.